to Sustainable Brand Index 2026. My name is Erik Elvingsson Hedén. I am the founder of Sustainable Brand Index and also the company behind the study called SB Insight. Happy to be here with you. I'm going to walk you through approximately 30 minutes of winners, of course, but also very, very interesting insights around sustainability and what's happening in the market and how the future is looking. So this is actually going to be very interesting. Sustainable Brand Index is since a long time now Europe's largest brand study on sustainability, which we're of course very proud of. You see some numbers over here, I think. Apart from having a lot of data, we also do a lot of analysis, which I think is maybe the most important part. And this year I'm actually a bit more excited than usual because this year we have done an analysis of all the data that we have. I mean, you could see the numbers, a lot of data, and we've analyzed all the data across the countries and also have made an interesting analysis focusing on what is the value of sustainability for the brand. And we have some very interesting insights that I'm going to share with you today. So we're launching a new index today as well. So a lot of things happening in this webinar. So stick around until the very end because it's going to be worth it, I promise. All right, let's get to it. To start with, I mean, we are experiencing a fairly challenging period in the history of sustainability, I would say. I'm sure most of you, maybe all of you, would agree. We're definitely getting challenged. You know, what is the, you know, why sustainability? Is it important anymore, and so on. So I think you're asking yourself these three questions actually. First of all, you know, is sustainability becoming less relevant to consumers? It's a big question. It's a you know, daunting questions maybe. Second, what role does sustainability actually play for the brand? I mean, this is one of the key things in Sustainable Brand Index. Why would we measure sustainability and perception, which we do, if, you know, it's not relevant for the brand? Big one. And of course the last but maybe the biggest one in some sense, you know, where the hell is the world heading? So we're going to try today and answer all of these, focusing a bit on 1 and 2, but you know, these are big questions and this is why we're here. That's why we work with Insights, to guide you through what the hell is going on. This year actually we're going to reverse everything a bit. First of all, I'm not going to talk too much about how we performed the study. I mean, probably many of you know that this is a brand study focusing on perception, consumer perception about sustainability, and also, of course, a lot around, you know, consumers, not only the relation to brands, but also the relation to, you know, sustainability as a whole. On our website, SB-Index.com, you can read more about it. You see it there, and you can read more about the, you know, methodology and the data collection and so on. So I'll leave it at that, but basically a big study, nationally representative sample of the population in each country that we do, where we do the study, and a lot of brands that we choose based on market share and brand awareness. So you cannot choose to be in the study or not in the study. We decide that. All right, but let's again flip the agenda a bit this year. For those of you who have watched this over the years, you know that usually we walk you through the key insight, what's happening in the market. And then we end up with the rankings, yeah, and the winners and the big release. We're going to flip it actually this year. So we're going to start with releasing the winners of Sustainable Brand Index 2026. Starting with the industry winners, and then of course counting down a bit the top 10 and ending up in the overall winner, the most sustainable brand in the country in 2026 according to consumers. Okay, very exciting. We're about to look into the industry winners in Sustainable Brand Index 2026 in Norway. Bit of background first. I did say I wasn't going to talk too much about how we do things and all that, but I think it's extremely relevant to know, you know, what does it mean to be an industry winner, or a winner, of course, even. Basically, it means that you have the largest share of consumers that are positive to the work you're doing in sustainability. By sustainability, we mean environmental responsibility and social responsibility. So that's the definition. And to make it a bit more tangible, we use the 17 global goals from the UN as the actual definition. So that's what we mean when we talk about these two pillars in environmental and social responsibility. So basically an aggregated score is what you get, which is, you know, the total share of positive consumers. All right, I think that's enough. If you need more, you have it on our website, of course. You can also reach out to me if you want to talk to me, which is always nice. But let's go and look at the winners in Sustainable Brand Index 2026 in Norway. And now I'm all of a sudden up here. Okay, that's a good thing. I don't know. But it's probably because I'm not the key or maybe the main event on this slide. But basically here we have the winners in the different industries. I'm going to share it chunk by chunk because in total we have, if I remember correctly, 26 industries in Norway. So first out, the 12 first winners of industries. Here you have them. Right. Congratulations. We have some old ones. We have Widerøe in airlines, which is, of course, having changed ownership and all that, but still a very strong brand. Toyota in automotive. We have Sparebanken, sorry. We have the Body Shop, Frile, you can see for yourself. A lot of classic winners, if I may say so. But we also have two new winners, as you can see. We have, first of all, Fortum in electricity and heating, taking the lead from Fjordkraft. So very interesting. I think it's actually the first time that we see Fortum coming up as number one. Huge congratulations. And we have Rørosmeieriet coming in as number one in food, which is, of course, as you all know, a very competitive industry when it comes to dairy, but also other types of categories. So huge congratulations not only to you two, but of course all the industry winners that we see here. And moving on, we can see that we have another 14 industries to look at. So here we have the remaining industry winners. Ta-da! We have some classics again: IKEA, Vinmonopolet, Mestergrön, Miele, Elköp, etc. We have a new winner in hotels. We have Scandic Hotels coming in as number one in the hotel industry. I mean, that is impressive in a very competitive market within hotels. You have Thun, of course, and you have the Strawberry Group. So, I mean, Norway is really a competitive industry in hotels, but Scandic drew the longest straw this year. So, very well done. And we also have a newcomer, entirely newcomer into the study, Baker Hansen, coming in at number one in restaurant, cafes and takeaway. So a newcomer, fairly small player, but really strong when it comes to sustainability perception in the minds of consumers. So congratulations. And all of you, the others that I haven't mentioned, you're here, we see you, we're very impressed because it takes time to build a sustainable brand, and it also takes a lot of consistency to do it. So claiming these positions as number one in your industry and keeping them, that's extremely impressive. So again, congratulations. And we move on to the overall winner of Sustainable Brand Index 2026. And it's gold, yes. I know. I talked to my colleagues this year about, hey, shouldn't we make the winner seal, the badge in gold? And they came over to me and they said, "Are you crazy, man? You cannot, touch our distinctive brand assets. It's crazy." And I said, "Well, I can." And so I did. That was a joke for all you marketing people out there. If you're not in marketing, it probably just flew over your head, and then just move on. All right, the winner in Sustainable Brand Index 2026 in Norway. Well, first of all, we're going to look at the top 10, counting down, of course. These are the top 10, all the way down to number 2. We have IKEA in furniture and decoration. As usual, we have Felleskjøpet in e-commerce. Q Q coming in at number 8. We have Flytåget number 7. We have Kolonihagen, a newcomer as you can see. So new brand we added to the study this year, coming in at number 6 right away. Very impressive. Number 6 out of roughly 260 brands. So that is very impressive. We have Tine at number 5. Always a top 10 brand. We have Finn.no having won Sustainable Brand Index for a few years, as you probably know. We have Posten at number 3. I think it's the 3rd consecutive year that we see Posten at number 3 in the ranking. So talking about consistency and you know, being a stable brand, stable leader, as you can see. And then we have Englamark, which was actually the winner of Sustainable Brand Index 2026 Denmark this year, as well as the past 3 years, and also the winner of Sustainable Brand Index 2025 in Norway. Yes, you did remember correctly. So we do have a new winner this year. We have a new winner, and I'm not sure. Can you guess it? Let's see if you can guess it. Maybe if you really paid attention in the industry winners and you're starting to, you know, reflect, you can see that the number 1 brand, the most sustainable brand, according to Norwegian consumers, the winner of Sustainable Brand Index 2026 is Rørosmeieriet. Yes, fantastic. Great job, Rørosmeieriet. I mean, this is a small brand, a small company, huge respect, because of course having the awareness among consumers is also a big part of claiming the number 1 position. So you have to not only be, you know, perceived as with a strong attitude, but you also have to have the high awareness. So this is a brand that has grown in people's minds. It is a brand that is, of course, very strong in the foundation when it comes to how they work and the small scale and the local and the Norwegian touch, so to speak. So, of course, it's a lot of strong assets for the brand, but also in times of like these, when the world looks the way it does, it's also something that people appreciate even more. So strong brand. Huge congratulations to Rørosmeieriet. Very happy to see this brand winning this year. And if you want to look a bit more, you know, you do want to, of course you want to do that. I know that you want to do that. You don't want to do it now. You want to wait just a while until I'm done with this webinar. But if you want to look a bit more, you can see that this year we've added some things to the website that you can look at. Some, you know, if you look at the top 3 here with Rørosmeieriet, Englamark and Posten, you can dive a bit deeper to look at what, you know, where's the ranking history, how does it look, the momentum of the brand. I mean, Rørosmeieriet have a strong momentum. As an example, Posten is quite flat because they're number 3. And you can see, you know, the peak rank for the brands, the years, the number of years we have ranked the brands in Sustainable Brand Index, the industry ranking, and so on. And the volatility, which I think is very interesting because, you know, some brands are, you know, quite stable or very stable, and otherwise other brands are a bit more jumping up and down. So that's something, among other things, that you can look at. So have a look after this, not now, after this. All right, we have the winners in the bag. Congratulations to all of them. And now we're venturing into kind of the second part of this webinar. And, you know, if you feel that, hey, I gotta go, well, that's your loss, because now comes the bomb. This year's analysis is gonna hopefully sweep you off the carpet, or whatever one says. But let's move on to these, or rather return to these questions that I asked in the beginning, or that I claim that you ask yourselves. And I think you are, most of you are, you know, is sustainability becoming less relevant for consumers? What role does sustainability actually play for the brand? I mean, these are key questions, because I mean, virtually between the lines, what we're saying here is it less relevant? Meaning, you know, oh, do people want to pay for it? And the other one is, of course, you know, does it matter? Is it something that is important to integrate into our brand? And, you know, and for a long time, there has been a lot of focus on maybe more soft values around this, and long-term values, and of course, you build a brand in the long-term perspective, which is definitely true. I believe that. But we need the numbers, and now we have them. So I'm going to focus mostly on those two questions, but of course, where the hell is the world heading? That's a bit up to you, I would say. And the basis of the analysis is basically this kind of myth, I would say, that I at least, and I think many of you agree with me, see every day almost in papers or in other on LinkedIn or whatever, wherever you get your information, that okay, we have a lot of cost of living crisis, we have conflicts, obviously a lot of conflicts around the world, we have political headwinds in terms of maybe ESG backlashes, etc. And those things have led to a kind of sustainability fatigue, or it's not that important anymore. Basically, that's really I would say this is the myth in the market at the moment. And I mean, it would be a mistake. Let me just say that to retreat today. So brands retreating today are misreading what is actually a structural shift for a passive trend. So I mean, if you're at a company or you're at a brand where you're kind of discussing, sustainability that used to be very hot and sexy a few years back, and it was a trendy topic, and now we're moving on to other things, then you need to rethink a bit. Of course, if you look at the first level insights, if I may call it so. I mean, this is a number and an insight or a KPI that many of you who have been with us before recognize. We always have this one, which is basically the interest in sustainability. The questions behind it is how often do you talk about sustainability with friends, family, acquaintances, and so on. So basically you perceive it's a part of the conversation. And I did tell you this last year. This actually still looks quite good, I would say. I mean, we did have a very positive trend between 2013 and 2016, and not the least because of the climate meeting in Paris in December 15. Then we had Donald Trump coming into power, we're bringing everything down basically the first time, and then we had Greta Thunberg and other activists pushing the climate agenda right above my head here. You can see that it really went up in all the countries, and then it went down with the pandemic. Yeah, but I also said this last year. We can see between 2021, 22, and today, and still today, and I mean this is new data for 2026. It's very stable. Yeah, the interest is very stable. It's gone, roughly the fluctuation is zero between 2021 and 2026. So we do see that it's stable. Is it high? Is it low? It's up to you to decide. We're, depending on the country, between 55 up to roughly 70%, which I would say, in depending on the context, is fairly high. However, it's not going up. It's fairly stable. Okay, all right. Does this actually transform into some kind of consumer behavior? Well, I mean, this is not actual behavior. That's something we measure as well, and that's another story. This is fairly classic way of asking people, how much does sustainability impact your purchasing decisions in general? So basically it's stated impact on purchasing decisions. So as you can see, I mean, now I also cut down the years a bit to 2022 and to 2026, because up until 2022 in all the countries it went up. I mean, not a lot, but it went, what do you say? Slowly but safety, so slowly but steadily, it went up. So in 22 it kind of peaked, high numbers in all the countries, as you can see. And then, I mean, even though I've dragged out the y-axis here a bit, you can see there's a negative trend. I mean, in most countries. I mean, Finland being the deviation here a bit, but still it's not going up, and it's actually going down in most countries. So yeah, people feel that it's not, or less people feel it's impacting their decisions. So we have this negative trend, and of course, in reality, we know that most people do not go into a store or a car dealership or whatever you're getting and thinking, hey, sustainability is going to be my number one priority here. That's the way it is. And again, then returns to our previous question. Is it important? Do people care anymore? And to dive deeper into this, and now I'm up here, we've actually made a time series analysis of all the data. I mean, we have a lot of data. I'm not bragging. Well, I am, but you know, it's no exaggeration. We have a lot of data in terms of different countries, many brands, many industries, a lot of interviews having been performed over the years, and a lot of brand assessments. And one thing that I do want to mention quite briefly here is that something we haven't been very open with over the years is that we actually measure both sustainability perception, but also general perception. So for all the brands where we measure sustainability perception, before getting to that part in the consumer interviews or respondent interviews, we actually put them through, you know, the traditional brand funnel in terms of, you know, what do you think about different brands, consideration, preference, purchasing, etc. So we have all the data, and looking at those together, that's unique for us, and that is something that we can do in this, doing this in this, you know, magnitude with all this data, that gives us a huge advantage and also something very interesting. So what we did, we looked at 1,400 brands across these 5 countries. And the reason why we didn't look at 1,600 brands is that some brands are too new to the study, so we added them just, you know, this year or last year or the year before. So we focused on the 1,400 brands that have been a part of the study for a fairly long time. And we derived 2 things. So one thing was what we call NRS, the net responsibility score. As you can see here, it's the positive consumers when it comes to your responsibility, environmental responsibility, social responsibility, minus the negative ones. Yeah. So basically the net score there. And then we did the same when it comes to the preference for the brand. So the consumers preferring brands before other brands, so to speak. So, and then we derived what we call NPS, not to be confused with a net promoter score, which is of course similar but not the same. So this is another score, net preference score. So in brand preference and recommendation intent, basically, net minus, you know, the negative ones. So we have these 2 scores. We looked at them, and what we found really fascinating when we did this time series analysis for the years 2014 to 2026 across 5 markets is that the correlation is actually huge. I mean, 0.75. For those of you who are working with statistics, you know this is a high and a strong correlation. And what is the correlation? Well, the correlation is actually between losing in your sustainability credibility, meaning, you know, this NRS, net responsibility score, is going down, and you're also losing preference, market preference or brand preference in this case. That's a super strong correlation. So, you know, quick conclusion here is the link between responsibility, being responsible, and actually having commercial success has never been stronger. Okay, you might think of this. Bear with me. I'll get to it. So what we did also as a part of the analysis was to divide it a bit, because if we look at the data, we did clearly see between 2014 to 2020, we had what we could call the good years. Yeah, people were positive, people liked the way brands were working with sustainability, the ranking scores went up. It was like, you know, ooh, fantastic, great period in time. And then we divided the other part, so we had the crisis years between 2022 to 2026, because that's where we've seen, you know, things going down, not only the consumer things that we looked at in terms of purchasing decision, but also brand perception within sustainability and preference for brands. So we've had tough years for brands and for sustainability in general. So we did see during times of crisis, if we may call them so, sustainability's impact on brand preference actually doubled. Yeah, okay. So it went from 28% to 56%. And of course, I mean, I'm not going to get into all the details here because we're going to share everything publicly and on our website and so on. But of course, we have cleaned the data from things like, you know, ownership, from price segment, pricing segment, if you're a budget brand or if you're a premium brand, for example, to, you know, where you're from, what industry you belong to. So all of the classic things that usually impact the way brands are perceived or taken into account, so to speak. And what we found was that, you know, there's definitely an upside in terms of positive signals, praise. That if you get good praise, if you get good mentions around sustainability, yes, you get an uplift. But the big part is actually that if you're not perceived to deliver and be responsible to a certain extent, if you don't hit that or raise above that floor, so to speak, the negative perception is much more turning into a preference loss, a brand preference loss. So that's one very interesting insight, I think, that it's asymmetric basically. You have the downside of failing is much greater than the upside of succeeding, which goes a bit to tell that, okay, maybe, should we shout about everything we do greatly within sustainability, or should we just make sure that we don't F up? Let's get back to that in a while. So you have to manage risk basically, and that is, now we're talking business, risk management. Now I want to step into just kind of a statistical thing, because some of you out there might think, okay, but correlation, Eric, is like, that old classic example from Chicago, that there was always almost a perfect correlation between the sales of ice cream and the number of people getting shot or killed in Chicago. Yes, because when the weather was nice, people went out, they bought ice cream. But another part of the fact that they went out was that they got into maybe altercations with others, and that ended up in violent endings in some cases. So they had nothing to do with each other. Or if the ice cream sales go up in Australia, the shark attacks go up. They got nothing to do with each other. So it's a spurious correlation, as it's called, a false one. Well, this isn't actually. That's what's interesting, because first of all, you have the asymmetry between the two ones. It's not like the positive praise or the positive sustainability perception works as well, so to speak, as the negative one. It's actually asymmetric, which is one indicator of that this is actually causality. Then I think the one thing that is mostly interesting and mostly relevant for us is that the NRS decline, so the net responsibility score, the sustainability aspect, if you may want to call it that, actually precedes the NPS, the net preference score, by 1 to 2 years, so between 12 to 24 months. It's preceding. So you have this leading indicator that once we lose in sustainability or responsibility responsibility score, it takes between a year or 2 years for the brand preference to go down as well. So that is also a clear indicator that it's just not a correlation or a spurious correlation. And also, if you look at the reversed correlation, if we reverse it, if we look at what's the correlation between, the brand preference going up, for example, and the responsibility perception going up, it's actually non-existent. It's more or less nothing, as you can see. So that is also interesting. So this time, this preceding is what I think is very important and very interesting. Also, another thing, brands within the same sector, if it's just a false or spurious correlation, they should have the same, most of them should have the same kind of development, so to speak. But we don't see that. We see huge differences between brands in the same industries, in the same categories. And of course, the last but not least, that this is a strengthening trend. So we see that it's actually growing over time, which is also very interesting, which is also something that is, I'm very excited about this. I think this is so interesting in so many ways. What do we mean when we talk about responsibility? Well, that's very important and interesting to talk about, I think, because there's also been quite a big shift from these two eras, up until 2020 and then after 2022. The crisis years or the good years versus the crisis years. What we see is that now actually social responsibility has also overtaken environmental responsibility as the primary driver of preference. So that is also interesting. You remember it was a lot of talk. It's to some extent still is, but it was a lot of talk maybe in the good years about, it was a green era, I would say. We talked a lot about environment, about climate and so on, and that was really the focus, the key topics around that. And now we see in this more challenging years, we do see that the correlation between social responsibility and preference has doubled compared to before. So it's gone up a lot over the past few years, which is also interesting. So we have you have higher expectations when it comes to social topics rather than environmental topics. Let's take a brief intermission here and look at the specifics more. What are important things specifically for people? Because we track, for all industries and all categories, we track what are important priorities in sustainability for companies, but we also track these more overarching themes that we're looking at here every year. So what we're seeing here is basically you have two big columns next to each other, and we're seeing what consumers in Norway say are things that companies should prioritize the most. And to the far right in each of these two columns, it's a column in itself. It's named 2026. There you can see the absolute numbers. So you can see that that's really what the state is right now. But I think it's also relevant to look at the trend for these and see what's happening since last year, for example. So you can see that some things are actually, moving upwards. We can see domestic productions, healthy products, good working conditions, domestic products. Good working conditions abroad. The other one was domestically. Anti-corruption, diversity and inclusion, etc. So we have super many social responsibility topics that are also on the rise, so to speak, in terms of actual general priority in sustainability among consumers. So that also goes to maybe emphasize a bit what I just told you about the impact on brand preference. So, returning to the original analysis, so to speak, a bit again, and what does it mean? So what does it mean for brands, for your brand? Well, basically what we're seeing now is kind of a new logic where we go from ladder to floor, which is, metaphor in some sense. So the old logic was very much, sustainability was a differentiator. We wanted it to be a differentiator. You wanted to make a premium position, or, you wanted to sell a sustainability and really emphasize all the good things that you did. And that was fine, good enough. But what we see, the new logic is very much, sustainability is now a structural floor. It's the minimum that people expect from you for, being allowed to play, so to speak. So there is an expectation on the level of responsibility that's unique for your brand. On the level of responsibility that you need to take. And if you're not above that floor, then you're in big trouble, my friend. So the risk is obviously, if you fall below this expected responsibility, you will most probably also see drops in brand preference. And that's not something that anyone likes. To counter this, or rather to visualize this so you can counter it, we have also mapped out all the brands, all these 1,400 brands in the study that we looked at. In what we call a crisis map. I know it's dramatic, but honestly it does not look very well. We have a lot of brands that are really in big trouble. If we had most brands in the positive development, I would definitely call it something else, but now the crisis map it is. So we have these four trajectories, meaning, this is the way you're heading, because this is really where I think we're onto something interesting this year when we're launching this, because Sustainable Brand Index in its regular sense or old sense or whatever you want to call it has been very much of, where are we? This is where we are. We are perceived like this. Now we're looking at where we're heading. What way are we heading? Are we moving in the right direction? So we have these four trajectories. You go from sustainable growth, which is of course, yes, you're perceived to deliver on the responsibility, and that is also moving, pushing your brand preference in a good way. You can be silently bleeding, which means that, you're actually having a fairly stable net responsibility score. So, you're not moving downwards in terms of that, but not high enough to actually, impact the preference in a good way, in a good enough way. You can have a legitimacy loss. Sorry, a lot of nice fancy words here, where you have a falling net responsibility score. So actually, the perception of your responsibility is going down. Your NPS, your net preference score, the brand preference, is actually stable for now. And then of course you have the free fall category where everything is looking quite bad. You have a responsibility score going down, and you also have at this very moment a net preference score going down. Because if you look at some of the other categories here, for example, the legitimacy loss, well, these are, we're waiting for the NPS, the net preference score, to drop. So this is kind of, again, the direction where we're heading. So what I want to summarize a bit and declare here is that, now we can actually see that sustainability, and maybe I should use the word responsibility, because it's really what people expect from you. You have to deliver on a certain low floor. So responsibility is a leading indicator, because we have now this kind of predictive power where we can actually see that sustainability perception, as we looked at it, is not a lagging effect. You communicate, you talk about it, you're kind of trying to convince people that you're a responsible, green, whatever brand, and then you're waiting for something to happen. Now it's actually the other way around. If you're lagging in this, if you're not delivering, then you will lag in probably loss of preference, and then probably commercial performance. You have a lead time, which is good, 1 to 2 years, which is, for some brands you should be nervous. For other brands it's good, you might be able to actually do something about it. So that's good, we can predict this. And then of course what we talk a lot about internally here is like there is a commercial debt to be paid, because if you retreat from sustainability because no one cares, no one wants to pay for it, the world is focusing on something else, there is a fatigue of sustainability, whatever. If you're then retreating, there will be a debt to pay in the coming year. It's silent, but it's going to be there when your brand preference goes down. So, Eric, what do we do? That's the big question you're asking yourselves. Well, of course, I'm going to give you some insights on that. Not everything, but there are some things that are key to actually understanding this change and thriving in it. So first of all, you need to realize there's been a shift, from consumers rewarding sustainability marketing and communication of big sorts to actually, just looking for consistent action from the companies and brands. Second, this fatigue of sustainability, or sustainability is not important anymore. That's not the case. The case is that people are tired of sustainability communication and the way it's been shaped and formed over the past years. So that's the problem. And to go forward, make sure the strategy has to be around reducing the risk of criticism, reducing that, rather than chasing, attention for campaigns or short-term projects that you're launching or initiatives. So you have to focus on reducing criticism to stay above that floor that I've talked about. And of course, we have all the data, we have all the insights regarding this. So our database and this analysis that we made kind of works as a early warning system to see, are you in the danger zone, are you in the free fall or somewhere else, and what should you do about it? So that's also a good thing to use. I want to summarize this part of the presentation with a quote. It's not Mark Twain, it's not Winston Churchill, it's me. Hopefully it'll maybe not carry the same weight, but still it'll carry some weight. Sustainability is not going out of fashion. It's becoming structural. And structural things don't go out of fashion. They quietly determine who wins and who loses. Keep that in mind. Let's get back to the original 3 questions and answer them. Is sustainability becoming less relevant to consumers? No, it's not. It's just changing shape and the way that they demand things from you. And it's actually getting tougher for you. That's the change in the game, I would say. What role does sustainability actually play for the brand? Well, a huge role. It'll actually lead to decreased brand preference, which will probably lead to lower commercial success, which is, not good for anyone. So yes, it plays a very important role. And of course, there are many details about this that I can tell you. And the last one, where the hell is the world heading? Well, that's a tough one. Maybe we'll just keep that one open for a while, but I would say that it's not maybe heading in the direction that we thought when it comes to sustainability. People still have a huge demand for you, for brands, for companies to be responsible and to actually deliver above the floor. Don't go below the floor, because then you have a problem. To keep you above the floor, this year, for the first time, Sustainable Brand Index is launching the Resiliency Index. So what we do here is we actually, when we did this analysis of all these brands over all these years, what we found out was that 65% of the brands in these 5 countries that we looked at are actually lacking resilience, meaning are falling below this floor that we talk about. Yeah, 65%, that's huge. So there are a lot of brands in the danger zone that needs to address this. So that's why we're launching the Resiliency Index, so we can show you how resilient your brand is and how you need to act going forward. And if you like, you can go to our website right now. Give me 1 more minute. And then you can actually look around and see, okay, where are we at in this resiliency index? And are we above or below the floor, basically? So check it out. You can see it here, just a screenshot of it. And now it's time for you to go to SBindex.com to check out all the results, the rankings in Sustainable Brand Index, the complementary rankings in the Resiliency Index, and of course all the insights and our analysis of what is going on in the market and how should we go from here. Thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate it, and I hope you found it insightful.